You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, and welcome to the Underground Subway. I'm your host for this podcast that is dedicated to one thing. It is dedicated to giving you the strategies, the tools necessary so that you and I and everyone we're connected with can live a better and more productive life, a life of liberty and freedom. In the United States of America, we just celebrated July 4th, which is Independence Day. And we're giving you the strategies to live an independent, free life. What does that mean? That means when I'm living a liberated or independent or free life, it means that I'm able to think, to move, to function without restraints. The question is, my friend, are we living without restraints? Are we living with things that are holding us back and we don't know about? That's what this podcast is dedicated to doing, revealing the chains and giving you and showing you the tools, the strategies, the things that we need to do to live a better and free life. Not just myself, but I want my entire family to be free with me. And so this podcast comes on with one intent, and that's to bring on quality guests to show you and give you their expertise to help us live a better and productive life. I'm excited about my guest for this edition of the Underground Subway, all the way from Australia. His name, I'm going to pronounce it. I'm not going to try to do it with the accent from Australia, but I'm just going to tell you his name is Philip Robison. And let me tell you a little bit about Philip as we move forward in this interview. Philip is the founder of what is called Saving Brothers. And one thing we need to know about Saving Brothers is that you are not alone. I'm excited about this interview because Philip's passion is geared toward men, and we'll talk about that later. Let me tell you a little bit more about Philip. Philip, he has a concept and a goal that may sound kind of simple, but when those 5 men tell other 5 men, let me tell you about that again. He didn't just want anyone else on the planet to feel devastated. And after he went through loss and went through emotional trauma, which led to near suicide, he decided to start something called Saving Brothers. And with Saving Brothers, he has a concept that may sound simple because it talks about teaching 5 men to help 5 men. That sounds simple, but when those 5 men tell another 5 men, and those 5 men tell another 5 men, that's 244 million men whose lives have been impacted in just 11 layers of pledges. Philip has built Saving Brothers from the ground up because this brotherhood is what he was missing from his journey in life. And building Saving Brothers, his goal has been to create a global community and resource for men that serves to meet men wherever they are in life, with a focus on empowering men to gain control over their health, self, and wealth by creating connection and better communication, not only for men, but for the women that love and support them. I want to welcome to the Underground Subway my friend and my brother, Philip Robison. Welcome, mate, if I said that correctly.
I can't tell you what, David, you did a pretty good job of saying g'day, mate.
Well,
pretty
thank you.
darn good
All
job
right.
at that. And it's absolutely my honour and pleasure to be sharing this space with you today, brother. And anytime I get to talk to my brothers anywhere in the world, because at the end of the day, we all matter. And the tagline at Saving Brothers, David, is you matter. And I'm going to tell you, David, your name is very easy to remember because my father's name is David. So
all right.
I've no excuse there, my friend.
Well, let's get into it, Philip. I reading your bio and reading a little bit about what you do and focusing on men. I want to ask you a question that right off the top of my head. I was talking to someone about a week or so ago, and we were talking about I walked into a little private sort of get together meeting with some coworkers, people at work, and there were women sitting there talking. And it immediately dawned on me that women will sit and they will talk and they will pour their hearts out to one another. Men, we struggle with that. why do men not want to talk and express themselves?
That's a great question, David. And I think that cuts really to the core of what a lot of Saving Brothers is really about. You're absolutely right. Women will sit around, they'll have a cup of tea, they'll have a chat, and they'll pour out their heart and what's going on in their lives with their family, their children, and their work and their spouse. But we, the hunter, from primitive times, we were taught to hunt. So we had to show strength. We couldn't be vulnerable. It was eat, kill, or be killed. Now, the thing with men is we retreat into our cave, David. So when something's not quite right, when we're struggling with something, rather than saying, hey, I really need to put my hand up and I need help and I need to talk about this, we go back into the depths, to the darkness of our soul, into our cave. And we've been taught that it's not cool to unload with what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what Saving Brothers is about, David. We've got a program called Keep 5 Alive, and there are 5 key pillars to that. And I'll cut straight to it, brother, because I'm conscious of time. Number 5 on that is a question that we teach brothers all over the world to ask. And that is, rather than say to a bloke, hey, how you going? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm not bad. Yep, everything's good. And we know that more often than not, these men are wearing a mask. We're very good at hiding our truth, David. So what we teach brothers all across the globe to ask is, hey, brother, how's your day going out of 10? Now, the reason, even though that's a very simple question, hey, brother, how's your day going out of 10? If sometimes I'll have people respond to me, David, and say, well, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. No, hang on. Whoa, brother. Let me reframe that. If 10 is outstanding and 1 is not really great, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Because men go into automatic pilot, you see. We just come up with an automated reply. So we sometimes got to pull them up. And when you can stop and get a man to actually think about that question and speak his truth, whether he gives you a score, David, of an 8 out of 10, or a 3 or a 1, the score's not that important. What we want to know then is, why did he give that score? So if he said, I'm a 3 out of 10, I go say, brother, what's going on for you? What made you give it a 3 out of 10? Our goal here, David, is to open up a pathway to a safe discussion. We don't have to think like the Rubik's Cube. The thing with us men, we think we've got to fix everything. We think like we've got to resolve everything. It's like when a wife comes home and she speaks to her husband and she says, oh, my God, this happened at work. And because he asks, how was your day, darling? And this happened. And he thinks, oh, my God, his brain goes into overdrive and he's got to come up with an answer. She just wants him to listen and just to put the load down, to unburden herself. It's the same with us brothers, David. We don't have, if we ask a brother and he gives us that 3 out of 10, we don't have to fix his problem. He just wants a safe space to be vulnerable and to know it's okay to share without judgment, and know that it's in fact, we teach brothers, David, it's a strength to show vulnerability. I always say to brothers, you've got tear ducts, use them. I'm not saying you need to walk around all day like a blubbering mess, but we were given tear ducts for a purpose. It is cleansing and self-healing to have a good cry. Mm-hmm. And there are times when that's appropriate.
Philip, let me ask you this, because you were talking about a safe place. How important is this word? I'm going to use a word that we really, as men, we struggle with. And I want to know from you, and maybe I can ask you this question the way you asked, how's my day going, on a scale of 1 to 10? What number would you place the word trust among men?
I think trust is absolutely at the core of everything that we do. Trust is absolutely everything. And unfortunately, at times we misuse trust, abuse trust, but also trust is important in trusting ourselves. And I use that word, I expand on that word of trust, the meaning, David, which is around self-care and self-love, which is actually number 1 on the Keep 5 Alive program, asking ourselves, how do I feel about me today on a score of 1 to 10? So that word trust, we need to, trust is almost, I use the word as trust in a context, David, of intuition. our internal compass, our internal guide. Trust that we know that we have the answers inside of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you. Okay, I hear your answer. Trust is being important. How does, I'm going to throw another word out, ego? How does that factor into trust? Now, the reason why I say ego is because, and if I'm wrong, you're the you're the expert, so correct me. Do you think men have a problem with ego in that we are always, you mentioned the hunter, we're always the lion that has to be the one with the biggest mane, and we've got to be the king in the room. We can't show our, you mentioned vulnerability. We can't show vulnerability. And doesn't our ego play a factor in that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think that we have been taught to hang on. I'm the guy. I'm the man here, boys. You know, like
Right.
I'm the number one. But we don't necessarily have to be that. We are no better than each other. We are all the same. God put us on this earth, and yes, there'll be some people that are leaders and others that aren't. But I almost use that word ego interchangeably with bravado. We don't have to be the top dog. It doesn't have to be I win, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
Life should be a partnership, a collaboration, a journey, the gift of giving, of service. So ego is important, but I think we've got to be careful with what we define it as, and not confuse ego with arrogance.
How, and again, I hope I'm not going into left field, and I use that term on purpose. How do you think sports has played into that? Because from childhood, a young boy is taught when he starts participating in athletics to be the top, to be the GOAT. And even through professional sports, the debate is who is what's the term, the GOAT, the greatest of all times.
Sure. We use the same term in Australia. Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. So we're taught that someone wins, someone loses. But interestingly, like if you look in the schools, I know in my country, in Australia, I think we have lost a lot of the competitive instincts, because like when you go to school sports, like the children are all given a ribbon for participating in the 100-meter dash. And it's like, no, that's not teaching you survival. That's not teaching you strength. So I think it's got its place that somebody wins, somebody loses in the context of sport. I think that's okay. That actually creates resilience and strength, your ability to deal with adversity. Just like the pandemic, we've had to deal with adversity. We've had to learn to be flexible, adaptable to change. So in the appropriate context of sports, you know, I like my sports. I follow the Warriors, for example. In Golden State, I saw Steph Curry the night he hit when I was traveling in San Francisco, probably about 6 years ago. I was there the night he hit the all-time three-point shooting record. And that was just, you know, pretty darn cool. So I love sports, and people are, you're going to have someone win, someone loses. That's how it is. But it's no different to Darwin's theory of the origin of the species. The strongest survive. Mm-hmm. Species die out because the dinosaurs, for example, they get eaten or something else. You know, they become extinct. So it's got its place. But it doesn't have to be dog eat dog in the context of doing business. I love what Stephen Covey used to say, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, David. He doesn't talk about win-lose. He talked about win-win or no deal. Everybody's got to be a winner. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great a philosophy to do business in. And it shouldn't be that I win and you lose in the context of life. It should be about service. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you know, I'll use your term, going into left field. You know, one of the reasons I think some people have depression, for example, is because they're so caught up in themselves and their own pain. When you take the spotlight off yourself and you have a heart and life of service where you focus on what you can do to help somebody else, you intrinsically feel better about yourself. Your self-worth goes up. Mm-hmm.
You know, Philip, coming back around the left field or to right field or wherever, you know, you mentioned focusing on certain things, focusing on the more important things in life. Men I want to get your view and opinion on this particular subject, how men as a whole, we focus so much on life. We focus on providing for the family. We focus on our careers. We focus on uh, many different things. There's one thing that I think men fail to focus on as much as we should, especially the older we get, and that's our health. Talk to us about wellness and health and how important that is for men.
Yeah, I am so glad you asked that question, brother. Let's use the car analogy. So you can have a really nice, neat sports car and you're driving down the highway and you're looking $1 million. Now, I had such a car when I was a young guy at 19. I was driving an Italian sports car. I was working on the Melbourne Stock Exchange, and I'm driving along thinking I'm pretty cool, too cool for school. Had the nice sunroof, and I'm thinking, Gordon Gecko, money, greed is good, all that sort of stuff. And I'm driving down the highway, and I'll explain why I'm giving you this analogy. It's answering your question. And all of a sudden, this noise happens in the engine. And I'm thinking, what is that? But I'm too cool. It's a summer's day, and I'm driving along, my sunglasses are on, and next minute, I hear this shudder, and the engine stops. It just literally stops. What happened, David, is I had an oil leak. I had not checked under the hood and therefore not paid attention to what was going on inside the engine, and I ended up blowing up the engine. Now, what has that got to do with health? Here is us as men. We do not like to go to a doctor. You ask a man, 100 men, hey, who goes to a doctor regularly and who's happy about going to a doctor? I think you'll find most men, no matter what country they live in, are not that great at being proactive with their health and getting their health checked. So my analogy about the car and the engine is no different to what's going on inside our bodies. We can have a beautiful hairstyle, beautiful skin, go to the gym, work out, look $1 million on the outside. But what if something's going on like a ticking time bomb inside our bodies? I'm a perfect example. I'm a 55-year-old guy, David. At 47, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I went through the cancer journey, had 5 surgeries for different complications. And that was a it's a challenging time. Unfortunately, men die from prostate cancer because they don't go to a doctor. There are no symptoms, David. So what I'm talking about is men being proactive with their health, which is number 3 on the Keep 5 Alive program. Get to a doctor every year and get your bloods done. Because we all think, particularly when we're younger, David, that we're invincible. We're strong, we're healthy, we're fit. I don't need to go to a doctor. Why would I want to go to a doctor? What's he going to tell me? What if something's bad? But at the end of the day, what we're about here at Saving Brothers, Dave, being proactive with our health so that we can, as men, reclaim the sovereignty over our health. You don't want your doctor to say, geez, David, I wish you had to come and see me a year ago. Right. I could have done more about this. Now let's get you comfortable and let's just make the best of it. That's an awful conversation. Imagine this conversation, though. Hey, David, well done. I'm glad you came in and saw me, brother. Look, we've caught it. We've got it early. The next few months are going to be a little bumpy, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay, brother. This is what our strategy is. That's a much better conversation, my friend.
Yes, it is.
So part of what we're doing at Saving Brothers, we've got a wellness app coming out, and my team are all based in the USA. And this wellness app for Saving Brothers, which will be available on Apple and Android, probably in about 4 to 6 weeks, will be what we call a health VA or a virtual assistant, David, to help you track all your health over the journey over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you talked about what number health was on the list. Tell us the list.
Okay, so number 1 is about self-love, self-care, asking ourselves as men, how do I feel about me today on a scale of 1 to 10? So you're really just checking in with yourself, because we need to reconcile with the guy that's looking back at us in the mirror. A lot of people don't actually like to look at themselves in a mirror. And how do I know that? I've been one of them in the past. I like myself a lot more these days than I used to. So number 1 is checking in with yourself. Where am I at today? Mm-hmm. And if you're low on the scale, it's okay not to be okay. Acknowledge that and then work out what you can do to change that. It might be just having a conversation with someone. Number 2 is exercise and movement. We know that exercise, in fact, 5 times a week, 30 minutes each session, has been proven to replace one antidepressant tablet per day. It releases good endorphins. So movement. It could be walking. I love walking. After our call, it's 7:22 in the AM here in Australia. It's 2 degrees Celsius, so it's reasonably cold. I'll be going out for a walk with my dog. Number 3, which I covered off before, brother, and that is getting to a doctor every year and getting your bloods done. My wellness app will enable you to track all your vital scores, whether it's glucose. He might say, I need you to keep a record of your glucose, keep a sleep diary, keep an eye on your blood pressure, your sleep, all these different things you'll be able to track in our wellness app for free. Number 4 is gratitude. Be thankful for what you do have in your life. What's good? Or if things aren't good, what could be good? So we will have a gratitude journal. And number 5 is regularly ask brothers that you come across in your day-to-day life, hey, brother, how's your day going out of 10? Now, you asked before, the whole Keep 5 Alive program, which will be part of the app, is we will have a token system, a bit like frequent flyer miles, David, that you'll be able to earn tokens that you can spend in our store for doing coaching around health, self, and wealth, lots of different things that we will be able to help brothers across the globe with.
Philip, that is powerful. I wrote those 5 things down, and in listening to you, you mentioned that you spent time in California and you're in Australia, which means to me that you've had experiences of dealing with men all over the globe. In your experience with men all over the world, what are the things that you think that most men will be the number one? Because you have a list of 5. If you were to categorize these 5 and say number 1 on the list that men around the world struggle with or need more work on the most, which one of these things would it be? The self-love, the exercise, getting to the doctor, keeping healthy, gratitude, or checking on their brother?
I certainly think as men, getting to a doctor is probably the number 1 form of self-love, self-care. Because we need to know what's going on inside our bodies. And that's why with the app, it'll have a lot of did you know fun facts. We're here to make health literacy for men fun and engaging, not men in white lab coats with clipboards. Mm-hmm. So I personally think getting to a doctor is the greatest gift, and tracking your health each year and having a plan of attack is the number 1 way to self-love and actually showing respect for yourself and for your brothers. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want to be a burden to our families and to ourselves and to our communities. There's so many things that we can do better, and it starts with getting to a doctor and understand what's going on in your body so that you can then look after that machine as best as possible to prolong and have a much, much better, healthier quality of life.
You know, I want to say this and get your opinion on it. And I want to piggyback off the analogy that you gave, because in the past, I've given friends that same analogy of the car. I was just amazed that you brung that up. And I was sharing with a friend, I said, when your car breaks down, or you have a flat tire or something goes wrong, you could take it to the shop and they'll fix it, and it may cost you a lot. But if you ever get to a point where they say, we can't fix it, it's total loss, then you have to go buy another one. And life isn't like that. You can go to the doctor, like you take your car to the mechanic, but there is no buying another one. You only have one car. And, I really like that analogy. But here's my question to you, in talking to men who have this attitude. Again, if you disagree, let me know, or if you agree, go in a little depth with it. Most men don't go to the doctor. The same reason some men don't take their car to the mechanic to get a routine check, because we feel like what I don't know won't hurt me.
Yeah, and what you don't know will hurt you. So ignorance is not bliss. Putting your head in the sand, because ultimately if you refuse or choose not to go to the doctor, you might get away with it. Some people are lucky. They might have a long life. But other people ultimately, if you don't service that car, now I know in the USA, for example, health insurance is expensive. You don't want to end up in a hospital. It costs you a lot of money. Yes, there are companies that will provide healthcare, absolutely, and people talk about that in the package of working for someone. But it is a lot less expensive if you go and get the oil change, the brake pads, the car serviced, rather than have something major blow up that could have been prevented by a bit of self-love and self-care. It's not a difficult thing for men to do. They just need to make themselves a priority. So, we can earn all the money we want, but you can't spend it when you're in a box, when you're 6 feet under.
That sort of segues into this question that I wanted to ask you, and I've got it highlighted and in big letters on my whiteboard here to ask you. You went through a period of time when you were contemplating suicide. Talk to us about suicide in men, because that's something that we don't talk a lot about. We hear a lot about suicide in regard to teenagers who are struggling with being bullied, etc. Talk to us about your experience with suicide, and talk to us about, does it happen with men and we just don't express it? Do we feel embarrassed to talk about it?
Well, actually, what I would encourage your listeners, David, is we had a really good podcast not that long ago where I interviewed Josh Latecki and Ramon Newman on the Saving Brothers podcast. And it was a podcast specifically about suicide. Now, Josh works with US veterans. So he's out in Texas, but works with veterans around meditation. I think a lot of what came out of that discussion, David, was a lack of purpose and being lost and a sense of hopelessness. And that's why it's so important to ask brothers that question, hey, brother, how's your day going out of 10? Because part of the problem, and we've had the same in Australia, David, is men feel the sense of hopelessness and aloneness. And we've actually had men through another charity that I'm aware of where a guy was going to take his life on that particular day. But because a brother reached out and asked him, hey, brother, how you doing out of 10? And he asked the question, why did you choose in the end not to take your life? And he said, because you asked, you showed interest in me.
Wow.
It's such a powerful question. We have no idea how a man is doing. And that is, as you know, as a man, David, and your listeners, we wear a mask or several masks. So we have the mask that says, hey, I'm okay. I'm a jock. I'm cool. I'm fine. But what is really going on if we take off the mask could be a sense of loss, hopelessness. I'm not loved. I don't matter. No one cares about me. We lack purpose. And that's why I say when you can focus on something external, part of my healing, my self-care and crawling from the bottom, and I love what Les Brown says, and I have a lot of US people I've followed over the years. If you can look up, get up. You can get up.
That's it.
And I love that. So the thing is, part of why I started to build Saving Brothers, this is all my money. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars behind it. I don't say that to impress anybody. It's more impressing upon your audience that I made a choice that my life needed to become a legacy for others. And so my life's dedication is to service and building a platform. I'm making the app free. No money made out of that app, but it's bringing a heck of a lot of awareness. And I know that my life and my legacy will have purpose because I'll be able to add to the value and extend people's lives and stop people taking their lives purely because we're creating discussions and engagement and encouragement that men can take self-responsibility for their lives. I think the key word is purpose. Purpose. People take their lives because they're lacking purpose, a sense of hopelessness. What does the Bible say? Without hope, the people will perish.
That's right. That's right. That is so powerful. Philip, I'm just, in awe. And I had to remind myself that we're doing a podcast because I'm sitting here listening to you as though I'm in a therapy session because the information is so powerful. As men, we just need, I always say on my podcast, I always ask a question. This is one of the first ones that I didn't ask. I give the analogy of a movie called Philadelphia, which is where I'm born and raised, in Philadelphia. And in that movie, Denzel Washington, who was an attorney, asked a witness a question, and he says, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. And I always bring that up in the podcast, and I haven't done it today, so I guess I need to explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old if I'm a man that's starting to feel depressed and alone, because I know eventually what's going to creep in, those thoughts of suicide. What would you say to me like I'm a 6-year-old? What do I need to do because I'm feeling a sense of hopelessness and loneliness in my life?
Yeah, I think I'd just say, I'd ask you to ask, what is good in your life right now? What's something that makes you happy? What's something that you enjoy doing?
Mm-hmm.
And do more of it. I think one of the greatest challenges for us as men is and we go back to what we spoke about earlier on this podcast, David, where we talked about the hunter analogy. So we go to school, we either go to college or we get a job, we might start a family, and we're on that treadmill, running. And we're looking at, like we're right in the race, and looking left and right at the people next to us. How are they doing compared to me? We're comparing ourselves to others constantly. And then men get into their 30s, and let's say by the time they're in their 40s, we talk about midlife crisis. And that is because men have been running so hard, and eventually they look up and they realise, why was I doing all this? This was not what my parents wanted me to be, a doctor, or they wanted me to get the job, or whatever it might have been. But we didn't listen to ourselves, our own internal compass. We didn't have the strength and the courage to listen. We just followed along with the herd. And most people, I think, do follow the herd. And that's why one day we get to this midlife crisis, because we go, is this all there is? I don't feel my life has meaning. You need to find meaning and purpose. And
Philip,
meaning and purpose comes through service.
That is so powerful. And we only have a few minutes left. But I got to hit this, even if we run up against the clock. How important is it to have a positive inner circle for a man?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's my best friends. How important is that?
Totally important, David. And we at Saving Brothers, we talk about helping 5 brothers. That's about accountability. Get around 5 people that can influence you to do good things. Be self-accountable. When you're accountable to others, we'll often do things for others, not necessarily for ourselves. So these guys are going to be your hood. They're going to be your crew, your brothers that are going to keep you in line. You set your goals, you create what you want to achieve. I mean, what do we talk about? That we're influenced by the 5 people around us. So choose your friends and your peers carefully and wisely.
My friend, I want to thank you for joining us. Before we go, tell us real quickly how we can get in touch with you and how anyone wants to connect with Saving Brothers, etc.
Sure. Well, certainly I will update you when the app is released, David, so that your listeners will be able to download the free app on Apple and Android, savingbrothers.com. And we're just about to release, that is available now, so you can go and have a look at that. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. I think I've got 22,000 followers at the moment on LinkedIn. It's a great way to connect with me. Certainly, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll always be up for a conversation with anyone, anywhere in the world, brother.
One final question before we go. Would you be willing in the future to come back and we can continue this conversation?
Totally. You take any time, David. It'd be an absolute pleasure to be with you, my brother, and your audience. Anytime, brother.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us on the Underground Subway. I want to thank Philip Robison for joining us all the way from Australia. He mentioned that it was 7:22 a.m. At the time he said that, it was 5:22 p.m. here. So he's in the next day, and on the other side of the world. He reached back into yesterday to help us, and we certainly appreciate his words of wisdom. I'm inspired. And I want to thank you all for joining the Underground Subway. I don't take it for granted that you take time out of your busy schedule to listen to this podcast, whether you're on the treadmill, in the gym, whether you're at work listening with your headphones, wherever you may be, in the car. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to listen to this podcast. Listen, my friends, I don't want to just end this podcast like normal, because this is a powerful podcast. As our guest Philip Robison was talking about there, my mind went back to a few years ago when I myself was in a situation where I felt as though life had no meaning and no purpose. I remember, and I don't mind being transparent, I remember laying in the bed at night with the gun on my pillow, thinking I had no hope, no way, no reason to live. I felt alone in a small room with no one to care for me, and certainly I didn't care for myself. I remember calling my daughter, and she said, "Dad, you got to live, not for yourself. If not for yourself, think about your grandchildren. You want to see them grow up." That gave me purpose. And whenever you tap into that purpose in life, it drives you forward. As men, we've got to come out of that shell and realize Philip made a reference to one thing in the Bible. I want to make a reference to another. It was a question that said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Believe it or not, yes, we are one another's keeper. We have to be there to help one another. I appreciate our guest. I appreciate you. I'm inspired to go forward. I'm inspired to tap into those 5 things. You see the information on the podcast, how to get in touch with Philip. Do it. Live. So we don't want to survive just to survive. We want to live and experience life at its best. My friends, thank you. The Underground Subway is a podcast dedicated to helping you to live a better life. And my friends, let me tell you something. The subway is pulled into the stop, and it is your stop to get off, but this train is going to keep on rolling. I'm David Alston, host of the Underground Subway. And before you go to bed tonight, do me a favor. Find a mirror, look yourself right in the eye, eyeball to eyeball, and ask yourself a question. Today, did I do something to make my life better? Did I do something to fulfill my purpose? Did I do something to make the world a better place? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. We don't have any more time to waste. We'll see you next time when this train is rolling on the Underground Subway. I'm David Alston. Have a great day and a better tomorrow.